So welcome once again, everyone, and I will get started and I'll kick off our conversation here. So as you all know, we're here to kind of celebrate International Women's Day and provide support to each other and learn from each other's experiences. So we'll kind of start off the conversation discussing journey and motivation. This looks different for all of us, and we all have different stories as to why we ended up in data roles or wanted to pursue tech. And I just wanted to start by asking a question. And Poornima, I'll start with you. What are all the reasons to be drawn to a job in tech, and more specifically, data, in your opinion? So, for instance, like what qualities suit professionals well in this field, and basically, why were you interested, and how did you end up here?
Yeah, great question actually. I think to give you a quick background, I basically grew up in India where I did my education, all of it there. So I think growing up, I was good at math and I was good at science. So like for me, like engineering was like a very natural career path like to get into. And so my brother was also studying engineering, and for me, like since I was also interested in math and science, I was good at it. I knew that I somewhere wanted to get into engineering, but I did not know which one at that point of time. I knew I wanted to do either chemical or computer engineering. So I was trying to debate between the two. And at that point of time, I think computer industry was just like, IT was booming and all of that. So my parents, like, they just suggested, hey, why don't you just do, computer engineering, get into it and see how you like it. So that's how I ended up. I went to Singapore where I got my bachelor's degree in computer engineering. I was just very good at logical problem solving. I was just very good at reasoning questions, and like I think coding in general is like a lot of reasoning and then thinking through like ifs and while conditions and loops and things like that, right? So it just came naturally to me. So that's how I ended up in a computer tech field, and I have no regrets. And since then, I feel like the computer industry and the tech industry has been growing, and there's just so much opportunity for everyone. But like when I joined my first job, I was like when I joined Microsoft Ireland, I was like among the only. There were only two women on the entire floor of like our team of software engineers and product manager. So like there was just one other girl, she was Chinese, and it was kind of new to me, like to experience all of that, and feel like, hey, I'm am I like an odd man out here, like I blend in and all of that. And more specifically, how I got into tech is, so I grew in my career as a senior software engineer, but like in our team we were doing a lot of like office releases, like the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all the releases that you get each month, all of that to all platforms like Mac, iOS, Windows, and Android. So we were already dealing with lots of huge amounts of data, like petabytes of office telemetry data, crash signal, and all of that to make release decisions. So that's when I realized, hey, like big data power, there's huge power in big data to drive business growth and business initiatives and features, like all of that. The I could see that the business and the leadership team was really interested in doing data driven things and things like that. So I wanted to, like, I was so without a formal degree, I started like learning things on YouTube. I started taking Coursera courses and all of that, because that just got me very curious. Hey, what is machine learning? What is how does all of these data science algorithms, all of these things work? I was just really curious of how one would extract insight from big data. And in the process, I just started learning, and at that point I've realized, hey, what, I really want to learn this in a formal setting, actually like go through a course curriculum. So that's why I joined University of Washington here. I got my master's in data science part-time while I was working at Microsoft. So that was my path. It was just curiosity to learn, and knowing that there is a lot of opportunity out there, and knowing that there is a lot of demand for this field, and knowing that this field is here to stay. That was my motivation.
I love it. I love it. And I think that your story about being one of two women or one of the only women on a team is very, very common. Thank you so much for sharing. ChengCheng, would you like to give us your experience?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similar themes. It's always, I think I've always been kind of a nerdy geek since high school. I just really love the problem solving aspect. So I actually started in high school, programming, building games and animations. And I think in some ways I got into the field because not so much the data side, but the programming side, I was kind of lazy. I found it was nice to be able to get computers to do the mind-numbing busy work. And so that's kind of how I kind of got in. And then in college, I studied linguistics and computer science because I was actually interested in building, computers that could understand human languages. But this was like way before all the AI boom. And so I think as far as qualities you were asking, I would say fundamentally it needs a love of learning, just because I think the logic and other things are also important, but just because the tech, it's always changing. So I think you need to have this love of learning, that you can't just want to master one thing and be set for life. So I've actually gone through multiple pivots. I would say the current path I currently work with. So I mean, I did have an undergraduate degree in linguistics and computer science and went back to get a master's in computer science as well. But the current stage where I'm working with large language models and AI safety, it was kind of a weird a path. I kind of have to thank COVID for it. It's a little weird to say that, but I took a long break to homeschool my kids in between. And so it was at COVID. My kids were kind of old enough. They were stuck at home. I didn't have to chauffeur them around. So I just started, self-learning just because I love learning. And then kind of online meetings and remote work became normalized. So I think I'm able to be in the field where I am today, a little bit thanks to COVID.
Well, that's all such great information. And I have to second that. I agree. A love for learning, like where you just never want to stop learning because you're just so curious. And that was the other thing. A desire to learn and curiosity, I think, are probably the two biggest qualities I see that are very synonymous across all of the people that get into actually data specific roles. And I think the same was for me too. I was just very curious, and I love the power of prediction. I came from a business background, so a little bit different. I did not do a STEM degree. I went to business. I was very business focused, and that was something that came very second nature to me. Was the idea of growing ventures, and so I lived in that world for quite a while myself, and decided I love the fact that I have this intuitive nature about me and decision making, but I did a little bit of SQL, and actually my business degree was in information systems, so there was a little bit of an overlap there, but I only did basic SQL coding. So for me, it was like I feel this lack. I feel like I have this skill that I really want to learn and hone, and so I totally career pivoted and did a little bit different than you, but I agree that I think that what drove that was my innate curiosity and knowing there has to be a much more precise way to back up that intuition in decision making. So that's why I ended up here. But I really loved those answers. It was definitely on point for, I think, the qualities that constitute a good career path for you if you possess those qualities. So kind of in the same fashion, I'd like to keep on this topic. I'll start with you, Poornima. Can you share a pivotal moment in your career or your personal journey that significantly shaped your path? Was there like a turning point or an experience that influenced your perspective on success and ambition?
Yeah, I think like one big change, at least that I can think about, that I did in my career. So I joined Microsoft as a software engineer, right? And then I went to Microsoft Ireland, where I worked there for 2 years again as a software engineer. I came here to Seattle. I continued working and then became a senior software engineer, which is where at that point I was also like just about to complete my master's in data science. At that point, I pivoted into my career as a technical product manager, which I think at a senior level usually involves it's like a discipline change, right? Like my senior software engineering roles involves me sitting every day coding, designing, architecting, and like working with other engineers doing code reviews and all of that. Whereas when I completely pivoted to a technical product manager, now my role involves thinking about what features should we build, why should we build this for customers, working with the data scientists, working with designers, working with other product managers to, really understand the customer requirements and come up with clarity for the team as to why we should build something. So that was like a big pivotal moment in my career, which happened like 2 years, roughly 2 years ago now. So yeah, I'm grateful that I made the transition. So today I'm a technical product manager for M365, Microsoft 365 team, where I leverage my data science background, where I leverage my software engineering background to be a more data driven PM. So today I partner with data scientists to build ML models. We partner with data scientists to use data science algorithms. But I'm not the one actually writing the code, but I'm the one figuring out how we leverage these technologies, how we leverage these systems to really solve the customer problem. Does machine learning really fit the problem space? Like, does data science algorithm fit the problem space? How can we leverage all of the customer data, telemetry data, usage data, engagement data, data of various different types that our product has? How do we take all of that data and extract insight that can be in turn used to drive product growth? So yeah, I think in this role today, I connect a lot of different dots. I use my engineering system architecture background and all of that to work with developers effectively to code the solution. Whereas I also work with designers to solve the customer problem in a very intuitive way. So yeah, I feel it was a pivotal moment in my career, which I was actually second guessing. Should I do it? Should I not do it? But I'm glad I did it. I'm really happy. And I feel like when you're happy in your job, when you're happy in the role that you're doing, it translates into better work.
Yeah, I think that's a good definition of success too. You know, in my personal opinion, I think reaching a job where you're actually very happy with the work you're doing is the definition of success to me. How about you, ChengCheng?
Yeah, I like how your pivot is into success. My pivots have all been like filled with like emotional drama, and I'm normally pretty calm. So I feel like I've had like 4 or 5 different lives. So if I have to pick one, it was probably shortly after I got my master's degree in computer science, and I was working at as a software engineer. So planning to climb that corporate ladder, and I think maybe similar. My manager, it was at my annual review, saying, "Oh, you're a great hire. We're putting you in the management track. You're on track to go into like Mr. Big Shot." They everything was supposed to go well, right? And so that was actually I was so clueless. I think it was the first time I actually thought, oh, so that's the career track of where I'm supposed to end up. And I'm just thinking about the job that I'm the ideal place where I'm supposed to be. And I thought, wow, that's really boring. And I kept sitting there thinking, and I actually started like tears streaming down my face, thinking how boring my future was going to be. I think this is not going to work. So obviously I didn't stay in that job for very long. So there was a lot of soul searching. And I think that's when my pivot, I would say, is going from being an employee to freelancing and running my own business, because that gave me a lot more, I guess, control, I would say. It's sort of kicked in my master's degree. A big part in the computer science part was actually software design. So we were kind of trained in design thinking. And so I think the design thinking sort of kicked in, and I started thinking about, my life as a problem. So I started thinking, what is my ideal life, and brainstorming how would I want to get there, and sort of just filling in the skills that I needed to get there. And so this was during the dot-com boom. So a lot of stuff were going on. So I sort of learned web development on my own. I mean, there were no classes or boot camp. It was just everything you just tinkered it around and try to figure things out. And so I would say this design thinking, it's kind of the same process that I applied when I pivoted from working to homeschooling, and then again when I went back to AI. So that I kind of figured it out on my own, but now there's actually a book out there called Designing Your Life, which is taking design thinking and applying to your life. And when I read the book, I'm like, that's exactly what I did. So I think that's what I learned. And as far as success, my definition, I would say it's always a work in progress, right? It's not a destination. And I've always been I would say I'm not a very ambitious person, but I'm just striving for not a boring life. I'm just looking for something that's fun and enjoyable. So that's kind of what I'm drawn towards.
Awesome. I think success and ambition is another one of those words, where it's very personal. It's very subjective. So I wouldn't say that you're not ambitious at all. I think the fact that you've designed the perfect life for you, I think that's really powerful and quite ambitious also. So yeah, I can relate a lot to changing my background as well. I reached a point in my career also where I thought the trajectory just didn't seem like I'd be happy doing it in the long run. And it felt like there was a big part of me missing, and a big part of the type of work I was doing day to day that I just was not getting enough of. And that was my pivotal moment. It was like, okay, I am a continuous learner and I'm not learning anything new anymore. And it's making me very sad. So that, I think I can relate a lot to that. And then also Poornima's point she made, you know, where you can draw from all of your various backgrounds and all your past lives that you've lived and roles that you've filled. They really translate well into the next thing. There's always something transferable. And I think uh, like you mentioned, you know, that you now can really pinpoint those really powerful use cases because of your data background. And I think that anybody who wants to learn data skills, that doesn't pigeonhole you into a data role. It actually creates a lot of opportunity for many other pathways for you. So those are great. I'm really loving this feedback we're getting here. And as we're talking about diverse career paths and all the different routes you can take, ChengCheng, I'd like to start with you here. Can you share your journey into data specific roles? I know that you mentioned a lot on your education, but can you highlight any significant challenges or turning points you encountered when you were going into your data roles, or doing, you know, your data projects specifically, especially as it pertains to your gender dynamics in the tech industry? Did you have any key lessons there to kind of share with our participants here?
Into data specifically, I would say my journey, it's, you know, I was coming out of homeschooling and studying AI. I would say the most challenging part for me was probably because I self-studied. A lot of people go back to do boot camps or degrees. I self-studied and enjoyed the learning, but in some ways it was a little lonely just doing things and not knowing if I was doing it right. So I did join some online women's group. I think we mentioned briefly this data circles or the Women in Data Science. And so they had a book club and discussing papers. And that was actually really great, just being around other people and especially women. And that kind of opened my eyes to some of the possibilities. And just to get in, I started volunteering for open source projects. As far as gender issues, the challenges, I don't think is unique to data, but just from being tech in general, I would say there's been very few females, right? My first programming contest, there were, you know, 20 schools around the Pacific, and I was the only girl. And then in all my classes, it's always been the only girl. Right now, they're talking about we're at 25%, aiming for parity at 50%. I think in my days when I started, it was mostly like 5%. It would be a lecture hall of 100 students, and it would be me and a handful of other girls. And yeah, same thing working in teams. I think I'm usually the only girl, but I feel I've been pretty fortunate that I haven't felt explicit discrimination. I kind of just bury my head in and just focus on doing good work. But just coming back this time, being involved with, you know, women who code or women in data science, it's having that tribe and the community support, encouragement. I think that makes a world of difference.
Couldn't agree more. And how about you, Poornima? Did you experience any issues beyond, you know, being one of two women on a team or at one point? You know, is there anything specific you can think back to on your journey that was a specific challenge related to your gender?
Um, Not specifically, you're talking about specifically in data roles, right? Actually, not so much in Microsoft, especially recently. So today, like my team, I feel like has really good ratio. Like there are a lot more women in our team. In fact, the data scientists I work very closely with, both of them are women. So I get to interact with them on a daily basis for projects and work, and we get to collaborate so much. So I feel like it might have been something I feel like it was more a few years ago, whereas now I feel that it's the ratio is really good, especially I think in big companies, but yeah, I don't know like what it is like in, you know, smaller firms and things like that.
That's so awesome to hear. I mean, I think I'm seeing that too. I mean, just the fact that I met so many powerful, amazing, brilliant women in this community. It just goes to show that we are making progress, right? And we're got to keep talking about these things and keep working on empowering and just really inspiring women to do this and saying, hey, it's okay. I think for me, that journey was tricky. I think my gender played a part, and also my background. I think how you're raised too also plays into it. But I think that's what hindered me from initially going into a computer science degree initially. I think I had this innate internal belief that I wasn't smart enough for it. And I think that's what kind of held me back. And then later on in life, when I had that crisis at my career where I said, I don't feel like I'm learning anything and I want to change. It made me really think back to, wow, I should have done a computer science degree when I was in college. And, I could have learned this, if this business stuff was, intuitive to me, I could have just learned that easily, but the computer science would have been much more helpful, as an undergrad. So I just want to encourage, if you're feeling like, okay, you might have an interest, or, you want to go after that senior role that only, that you only have male leadership, please do that. And you are capable and you are powerful enough to do that. So I know that we can all kind of relate to stories like this. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. So, and as we're continuing to talk about challenges and overcoming obstacles, there are other things, that impact women specifically, trying to develop their careers. Besides just being a woman in a male dominated industry. Poornima, reflecting on your journey, what has been one of the most challenging obstacles you faced, either as a high achiever or, a caregiver, a career transitioner, or just a dynamic trailblazer in a profession of your choice? Like, how did you navigate those challenges and what lessons did you learn from it?
Yeah, I feel like I think in your career there are different kinds of challenges at different points in your career, based on whether you want to learn a new technology, or whether it could be that you're working towards your promotion, or whether it could be that when you become a mom, you're trying to juggle between your parent life and your work life, or when you're trying to maintain that work life balance, or maybe it could be that you're having a health issue, or maybe it could be that you're having a relationship issue. It could be anything, right? So I think, in all of these things, what has been constant is my dedication and passion for my work that I do. And I think that's what keeps me going and it helps me overcome these obstacles. Um, so I think, is that your question? Like, what are the is the question of what are the obstacles, or is the question like how did I overcome them?
So yeah, if you had a specific obstacle, like just your experience with it, and then what was your lesson learned and how you overcame that? Yeah. How did you move forward, the new and improved Poornima after you experienced that?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think it's just, I feel like, definitely it makes you a better person. It makes you stronger. And I think what kept me going is just belief that things will be all right, and just knowing that, hey, it's something I enjoy, it's something I like, and which is why, it keeps you motivated to, even when you face obstacle, it doesn't deter you from what you're doing. And if it is something I feel you don't enjoy, then it's very easy to give up. It's very easy to is very easy to break in. But I feel like if you're passionate about something, you keep pushing yourself to learn and become better.
Amazing. How about you, ChengCheng?
Yeah, what Poornima mentioned reminds me of a book I just read last month called Range, where a lot of people, there's a push, it's between generalists and specialists, and there's been a lot of push in trying to specialize sooner and sooner. But they're finding the people who are actually successful actually they're generalists. They've tried a lot of things to figure out what they actually like. And once you find a good match, then the passion and the grit and the success kind of comes, because if you're forcing yourself to specialize in something you're not really that interested in, it's going to be an uphill battle. Yeah, and as far as challenges for me, I think it's mostly internal. I would say the common ones is perfectionism and imposter syndrome. I would say, especially when I was younger, I was very shy and kind of underestimated my abilities. I just assumed that everybody older and wiser ought to know better, so I would just naturally defer to others. So I think part of it, I'm not sure it's necessarily learning, but just getting older with the age and experience. You kind of get a little bit more comfortable after you've seen enough people say things. They're like, yeah, I think I can have something to say. So maybe I might overcompensate, like maybe a little too overconfident sometimes, which is not a good thing either. But what I learned, I would say, is as I've gotten to know more and more people, it's just people are humans, and even the people who are very successful, they have their own insecurities. So I would just say be very forgiving of yourself and other people. If people do or say things that kind of rub you the wrong way, just maybe they're having a bad day, just be very forgiving in general. And yeah, don't be too harsh on yourself either. I think that would probably be the biggest thing that came from age and experience.
Oh man, yeah, I agree. We have to give ourselves grace. And yes, time. It is very powerful, and it is a very good tool. And you do get more wise with age and just experience. That's for sure. It just happens naturally. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think a challenging moment for me is I worked in the construction industry for a very long time. And so I know that things are getting better and hopefully workplaces don't experience this, but I did experience a lot of sexism. I was the only woman in the West Coast region managing my branch, and I did that basically because I was ambitious, and of course I wanted to achieve and work really hard. But I felt compelled to be sort of like a trailblazer in a way that, like, hey, if I do this, maybe these other amazing women that I work with will start speaking up for themselves a little bit and putting themselves out there more. So I think that was unique for me. One of the things I did learn though, because I felt like for a long time, and this might still be the case for a lot of people, but you feel like you have to play the game, right? You have got to play the game so you can get to the place that you need to be where you can make the change. And what I learned along the way is, yeah, you can play the game, but you can still remain authentic to yourself. Don't compromise who you are. Don't compromise the owning your gender and the things that you like about yourself and your personality to play the game. That was one of my most powerful takeaways from that. I'm just loving this conversation so much. Thank you for all these great answers. I'm going to roll right into the next one if you guys would like. Talking about reentry into a data profession or taking, breaks. ChengCheng, I'd like to start with you for those of us in the audience here who have taken a career break, such as for parenting or personal reasons. What challenges did you face when you returned to your data profession? And how did you stay updated on during your break? And what advice would you give to others who are trying to plan their same return?
Yeah, we didn't quite introduce, but I guess I mentioned that I did take a break to homeschool my kids. And I know a lot of people, as I've seen people say, oh, I took a couple months, I took 8 months or a year, or maybe even 2 years. I'll just make it clear. I took over 10 years off. So this was a huge break. It wasn't a little break. And so I think what you would expect, it's this initial fear. I'm outdated, I'm too old, there's so much to catch up. I mean, the world's completely different from when I left the field, right? So when I first started attending meetings, just the jargon, or I was reading, just there's so much terminology and jargon that I wasn't originally even planning to work. I thought I'm just kind of done, didn't really have much to give. And honestly, during my break, I wasn't planning to necessarily come back into the field. So I didn't really actively stay up to date with things. And the things that did help coming back, one is, organizations like Women Who Code saying, women, you can do it. So I think that was encouraging, that helped, but also leveraging a lot of transferable skills. What I didn't realize is there's a lot of things that I mean, homeschooling, it wasn't just like, washing dishes and laundry the whole time. I mean, there was a lot of volunteering and leadership. So all the soft skills and organizing events and activities that turned out to be pretty handy in the workforce. And as far as, tech jobs, I kind of snuck in, right? In addition to having a background in computer science, I actually also went to art school and had some graphic design. I took graphic design classes. So graphic design doesn't change quite as much. I mean, it did change a lot too. So I think I started off on projects when I volunteered doing some design work, and then slowly easing my way into doing some programming before I started doing the AI stuff. So advice, if you're trying to come back in, I would just say, or even pivoting, is take on small projects. A lot of it is trying things because it's before you dive in, do some things that are sort of low risk to try out small projects or a side hustle just to see how things work. The one thing that it was a little unplanned that ended up helping me was because I was self-employed and I had a business, and I was kind of too lazy to end the business when I took my break, because I always thought, oh, maybe I'll take on some small projects. So I was working a little bit part-time throughout. So I had that business that was running through the whole time that I took the break. So it doesn't look like I have a big gap that's glaring. And when I pick up clients now, I am very honest. I say that, I haven't been working for this entire period. There was a break in between. And most of the jobs that I get now, it's based on my portfolio, not on the history or the number of years. So I think that helps. And again, the community, I think that helps you easing it in. And I think we've covered it. Stay curious, to keep leaning and learning and trying new things is definitely that mindset.
Absolutely. I kind of second that experience. I did take a slight career break myself to educate myself. I did leave the role I was in when I was working construction for so long. It was not meant to be as long of a break as it was because it happened during COVID as well. So I think I can also say, oddly enough, thank you, COVID, a little bit for, helping me establish this new career path. But I did the same thing. I started a business right away, using the skills I already had to start consulting word of mouth people that I already knew needed help with their businesses. And I started learning, but then I had to start homeschooling my son. And that was a bit of a challenge. And I felt like, even with a year or two, that I did also have those same, concerns. Am I relevant anymore? And I feel like everyone's going to go through that who's experienced a career break, and it's not true. Lean into those curiosities once again, but you have to lean into the experience you've already brought to the table. Once again, where wisdom and years of experience count for a lot, and especially those soft skills really come in handy when you're trying to just take a pivot or to try something new, or even just get back into the work you were doing. And if you took a break, chances are you did it for a really good reason, and you've grown from that experience in and of itself. So I don't think it should deter you. And I think that there's plenty of women and men out there that have gone through the same thing. It's becoming more acceptable now. It just is. But I do have another, point of view to explore here. Some people, are able to kind of carry through this a little bit. And I know, Poornima, you've been extremely successful in balancing. And I wanted to just kind of direct this question to you about balancing your professional aspirations with your personal commitments and how that can be complex, especially if you're a high performer and you really care about your career a lot. So I wanted to know from you, how do you approach work-life integration, and kind of what strategies you have found most successful for implementing and maintaining balance in your life?
Yeah, I think great question. So I think it's every day. It's a work in progress. I'm still learning because my son is only 10 months old, and I'm just new to this whole thing of balancing work life and personal life. Like before my son was born, like I was someone who used to go to work every day. Like I love being in person, love attending meetings. I love that energy. But now since I have become a mom, like I feel like just for the first year, I feel like I want to be with my son. I want to be, even though my in-laws are here taking care of him, like I still feel like he needs me when he wants to go to sleep. So I try to, like in between work, I take a few minutes, just go check on him, see what's going on. So it is it is difficult, but I feel like I'm grateful that at least at Microsoft I have that freedom that I can work from home and still do my work. So I try to, like, my work now, I feel like the boundary has little bit expanded. Like earlier, I used to be someone 9 to 5. I finish my work, I close my desk. But now, it's like if my son is sleeping in the evening, if I have a bit of time, I'll go back to my computer. I'll try to finish my work. I'll try to finish that email that I want to send off. At night, if I have some time, I'll try to do it. If that is what it is what it is. And yeah, like I think even like, I think I've told you this before that, when I was pregnant, I was studying, I was working. I think I've just been someone who just likes multitasking a few things at a time. So that is good, but I think it also involves in the background, like what you don't see is a huge supportive family. It's a huge supportive partner. All of that, it goes behind. If as a mom, if you're able to juggle work life and take care of your family and be good at your profession, I think it takes a whole village. So yeah. Yeah.
That's so wonderful to hear. First of all, I commend you. A lot of us have been through that, and the adjustment phase from not being a mother to becoming one is such a wild transition. It really is. Even if you are super excited about the experience and have welcomed it your whole life, you've wanted to be a mother, it's still a really difficult transition, especially for a high performer. I remember struggling with,
Yeah.
am I just not good at my job anymore, because now I have this other part of me that's taking my attention that I care about so deeply. Like you mentioned, you wanted to go in person and be working in person all the time, but now you have more of a draw to be there for your family. And I think that's a beautiful thing to realize, that no, if you're not less of a performer, that there's multifacets to your dynamic personality. And it's a very a good privilege to have a remote work scenario, but you are not less of a performer because you have a family. And then also how we should all remain advocates for having the flexible work lifestyles that we are afforded now, for both men and women, just for this very reason, right? It's so important to make sure that children are being raised with good environments where their parents are around. And I think it's good that we keep advocating for these types of work scenarios. I loved hearing that. Well, and congratulations for your new son.
Yeah, thank you. I think the
Yeah.
point that you said like totally resonates, right? Like you felt like, am I good enough? Like, am I doing enough? So I think I felt that absolutely. So when I came back from a maternity leave of 5 months, like even though like, it's maternity leave, the 5 months, you're not at all on a break, you're just completely busy taking care of your kid and everything. But when I came back, I felt like, hey, I have been on this huge break. I maybe need to like overcompensate. So the time when I came back, I really worked really hard, like in the initial month, trying to like, make everyone feel at work that, hey, even though I went on like I went on a break, I've come back, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to perform any less. And I think I started putting in more effort and started doing more work at least. And then I realized, hey, you know what, it's not required. I could just do my regular work and that should be enough. So I think as a mom, you also, if you give too much to your work, you feel guilty that you're not giving enough time for your kid. And then if you give too much time to your kid, you feel like you're not giving enough time to your work. So I think it's a never ending battle that we'll always deal with, and I think I've just accepted it.
Right. And I think it's totally normal. I think we all experience that, right? It's like splitting your what you care about in half. It's just this new thing.
Exactly.
But we all relate to it. And ChengCheng, you brought up something when we were talking earlier that I thought was so cool. You homeschool your children, which I was like, I am so impressed with that. The fact that you can, even get your children in the mind space to receive what you're trying to teach them. And you mentioned something about, psychology being a big part of that. And see, to me, that's just an example of how when you're taking a break and you're raising children or you're doing, your duties as in your personal life, like you are learning skills and you are doing valuable things that are helping you grow as a professional as well. So I really like that anecdote you shared with me, and I wanted to kind of share it with our participants also. Yeah, I'm loving this. Let's see, we have a few more questions to go through that I wanted to kind of go through, our format with the moderated questions, but I do have some from the audience as well. I want to make sure I have enough time. And I see some great conversation going on in chat. Thank you so much. If you feel compelled, please use the chat and share your experiences. So I want to shift gears to innovation and change. And that requires stepping out of your comfort zones and challenging the status quo. And we've kind of talked about this a little bit. But ChengCheng, can you share an instance where you have had to innovate or pivot significantly in your career life? And you mentioned a couple already, but maybe there's one specific anecdote maybe we could talk about. And what drove that change and what impact did it have on your trajectory? I think there you had a lot of anecdotes, but
Yeah, I think we mentioned, I really feel like my life has been in sort of 4 or 5 phases, right? I started off with linguistics. You mentioned you started off in business, or we didn't necessarily start off in computer science. I took computer science classes, but starting off with linguistics, I felt like I was a humanities and I didn't really, it was a little bit of fear too that I didn't want to take all the math and computers, science classes. So I think there was some fear there. And so then there's my software engineering side and then the freelance side where I felt I really found my calling. And as much as I love the work, that I got to have so much control, then when my kids came along, it was the calling. So it feel like, and then I guess we have some coming in, sorry. But and then the pivot into the AI side. So I think there's been multiple pivots. The recurring theme that I learned, I would say, I think I've mentioned, is that designing your own life. You're in control in your direction, right? So figure out what you want in your life, find your purpose, your meaning, and figure out how to get there, and what skills you need to pick up. So and I think a lot of it is just as I've grown, I've gotten to know people. When you were talking about the psychology with the kids, that's actually a very transferable skill when you start working with clients and users, or other people that you're working with on your team. You need to learn how to motivate them in a way that it will feel win-win. You get what you want, but you also listen and you know what they want. So you present what you want in a way that's a shared vision, a shared goal, having some common ground to start off with. So it's all the communication and understanding with people that I think that's not a pivot, but it's just something that's grown through the years, that's made coming back into the workforce easier is when I work with a client, I listen to what they're trying, what they want. And in some ways I feel like my kids are older. I'm working with, older kids now, and sort of my mother figure is kicking in. It's like, well, what's your goal? What do you want? How can I help you get there?
I love that. I love that. And then I have a somewhat different question to ask you, Poornima. As someone who's actively contributing to innovation as a data professional, I wanted to discuss maybe a project or initiative that you're passionate about, and maybe how you're working towards introducing new ideas or solutions in your areas of expertise, because you do this often.
Yeah, I think I cannot specifically talk about certain projects that I'm doing at work because they're work related. Um, but yeah, I think so one of the things that I did previously at Microsoft was one of the projects that we worked on for the hackathon. So Microsoft has this global hackathon each year where all the employees in the company can participate. So it's company wide. So there's just at least 60,000 to 70,000 employees that participate. So one of the hackathons, the team that I was part of, we won the second place in the artificial intelligence category, which was a really good learning experience and a good way for me to be part of an innovative project and learn the technical stack and all of that. So our team, what we did is we built like a machine learning model, which could basically identify the probability of your code containing a bug based on historical bug check-ins and historical check-ins that we did. So you take a Git repository, you take all the check-ins that happen into the Git repository, you classify all the check-ins as either a good commit or as a buggy commit, and then you train a machine learning model to learn what contributes to a buggy code. And then we built a plugin on Visual Studio which would highlight based on red, yellow, green. It would say what are the probability of the code that you write containing a bug. So it just gives you like an end-to-end exposure of how to build like a project that's running, like a machine learning model, train it, validate it, and all of that. So that was a great learning experience for me. And then the work that we did resulted in patents at Microsoft as well. So yeah, I think what I do is I try to step out of my comfort zone every now and then, be involved in projects just outside of my work as well, where I can learn what's happening in the industry, where I can learn what are the latest things happening to keep myself up to date.
I love that. And then I'm just going to kind of wrap that up with this last question. And I'm going to preface this question saying, I know that we've all mentioned networks and mentorship and how important those support systems are for navigating your career. Not only personal support systems, picking the right partners and the right people and having, cultivating a village, to help you in those regards, but also finding mentorship in a professional field. And I know that that's impacted us a lot. I don't know if there's any specific shout outs or mentions that either of you have on, an experience you've had where mentorship has successfully, catapulted your career that you would like to share with our audience. Anyone?
I think in my case, I wouldn't say there was one mentor that catapulted my career. I would say very early on as an undergraduate in linguistics, I had a professor who was a wonderful mentor that opened a lot of opportunities and gave me my first job, that helped me pay for college and gave me the opportunities that helped me land later jobs and actually got me a fellowship to go on to grad school for free. So I think that was huge in setting up. I was very shy and just not very sure of myself. I felt she saw something in me before, I even had the confidence in myself. So I think that was a very early laying the groundwork. And so I'm eternally grateful for her. And just throughout my life later on, I've been lucky to have people that just willing to give me honest feedback that's so valuable. It shows that they care and gives a safe space to improve. So I definitely feel having mentors, even if it's not an official relationship, just people who are willing to give you feedback has been really important and very helpful in just having that support network.
Awesome. How about you, Poornima? Anything you can recall that helped?
Yeah, for me, so what I do is like if I see someone whose career I want to emulate or someone at Microsoft that I really admire, someone who I feel like would be really great to just speak, I'll just reach out to them. I'll just be very shameless. I'll just send them an email. I'll just send them a text message. And if they reply back and if they have a conversation with me, I just like find it really valuable. So that is something that I like to do, is just, ask anyone that I really look up to, or, I want to learn from them. And then other things is professionally, I've had a few mentors within Microsoft that have been really great. As I've also transitioned from dev to the PM world, tech TPM world, I've really found some really good mentors who have guided me, who have given me good, valuable feedback, and, provided me advice that I take back into my work. But even just apart from professional, I think my mom is my biggest champion. I like always like talk to her for any advice, any career advice, any professional advice, any support to, just take my career forward, or just deal with any challenges that come my way.
I love hearing that. And I think that strategy for finding people that you want to emulate, who's someone that you really admire and the work that they're doing, and you would like to do that work too. Even just following those people, if they post on social media, you can learn something from that as well, and be shameless, right? I think those shameless outreaches sometimes can really work out for you. I love that method. Awesome. I have a great question here from the audience. Jenny asks, when going through a career transition, how do you decide between self-study versus going back to school? And how were you able to decide which would give you the best ROI?
I
If
think
anyone wants to jump in on that.
if it were, I guess my opinion is it depends on yourself, right? Because I dealt with this a lot with my kids on what can I teach at home and what should I outsource. Do you have the discipline and motivation to learn on your own, or do you need that peer support and outside someone being on top of you? So for my kids, I did have to outsource because they learn better in a group, in a community. Whereas for myself, I know I was motivated that I can cover a lot more ground if I have a video. I can just, I'm like laser focused that I can just get through stuff and check on myself. So I think you kind of need to, it goes back to know thyself and have some self-awareness. I think you can probably cover things a little faster yourself, but if you have a group, the camaraderie, there is something to be said about that gives you the motivation to stick it out in the long run. And then probably if you have mentors or teachers that can help you with your network. So yeah, it kind of depends on your personality and knowing where your strengths and weaknesses are.
I definitely agree. And also if you decide to do the self-learning path, make sure you do consult experts that can help you kind of, map that out and kind of curate, your study plan of attack, because you can get really inundated, I think, and very overwhelmed with the amount of resources that are out there and picking which path to go with self-study. But I think to your point, yeah, maybe you might be able to hone in on what it is you want to do more and maybe cover the material faster. But sometimes having that formal setting does make you push yourself a little harder sometimes, depending on your personality. I think we all kind of do that. I was just talking to someone the other day about how exercise class is actually better for me than exercising by myself, because if I'm there with other people, I might push myself a little harder and I might just kind of hang out, and not really break a sweat if I'm doing it by myself. But that's just me personally. I love that question. If anyone else has any other questions, this is a great time. You can raise your hand, you can turn on your camera or your microphone if you like. Please feel free to jump in. We have a little bit of time left, and we certainly would like to meet you and hear from your perspectives. Angela is putting in some really great advice here as well. And she says that the advantage of going back to school versus self-study is that with studying with other people too, and the networking aspect, right? So if you're studying by yourself, you really have to go out of your way to kind of build that networking experience and to kind of cultivate those connections a little bit more than you would if you kind of baked yourself into an environment where you're able to meet people. Yeah, I agree with that. Any other questions from the audience? And you're really not an audience, you're a participant. So, we're here. This is an open forum for your support.
Oh, there's a question in the chat. Adriana asked, any experience with ageism?
Oh, that's a very good question. And I'll date myself. I'm 41. So I'm definitely not a spring chicken. I've been around for quite a while. I don't know that I've experienced ageism in my career pivot or my transitions. But I have to say that being honest, I do feel that in the back of my head is something that I kind of need to hide sometimes. And I feel like this tendency to want to pretend like maybe I'm not as old as I am, and I really have to correct myself. Because once again, you know, the wisdom is very important and it's a very valuable thing, the life experiences that you have. So I haven't experienced anything yet, but I do say that it does affect my cognition, and I'm kind of always thinking in the back of my head, am I too old to be doing this? And maybe they don't want to, you know, work with someone who's that old or something, but I haven't experienced it. Have either of you, either one way or the other, being too young or too old?
I would say most of my career, I've been on the young end. So this is the first time in my career that I've been on the older end. And I'll date myself and I'll just say that I'm older than even Lindsey. So by quite a bit. And part of why I do this, why I'm doing this is I'm actually pretty private. I don't normally share much about my private life. But what's motivating me to share now is because I've homeschooled. I have so many moms who they had very successful careers in their previous life. They took off, not necessarily homeschool, but stay-at-home moms that just took a career break. And despite how successful they are, they feel that they're too old or they're too dated. And what helped me get back in is hearing some stories of other people. And so I'm kind of paying it forward, doing my part, saying if I can do it, and I know other people, my story is not unique. If there's other people who are worried about it, maybe it's out there. I haven't really personally experienced it. I think it's probably more in your head than external. There might be something out there, but you're probably holding yourself more than the external world. So that's kind of why I'm here and what I'm hoping the message here is.
Awesome. How about you, Poornima? Were you ever, I'm assuming maybe you have had experiences where you've taken on roles and maybe people might not take you seriously enough because you're too young, you know?
Exactly. I was just going to say that Angela posted that on chat, and I completely second that. That I think it's, in fact, the reverse is more true, where you feel like you want to pretend to know everything, where you want to like have an MBA, you want to have a master's degree, you want to be in that leadership role, you want to be a manager, you want to like lead people. And I think the reverse is true, where when you're very young, you're looking at all of these senior folks and have that imposter syndrome. Hey, you know, what reviews am I going to get from them? What are they going to say about my performance? So I think I felt that early on in my career, definitely, where there was a lot of second guessing, and there was wanting to be senior in a role. So I think what it really shows is that you can never be in a place that's perfect when you're too young, when you're too old, when you're like, I think it just matters how you just deal everything with a smile, I think.
Yeah. And I'm seeing Angela, thank you for your inputs here about being a young person, you know, you do need to slow down a little bit, enjoy being young. Don't chase after, you know, wanting to be senior immediately. Of course, we all have those goals in mind, but you know, the journey is where you're going to learn those experiences that are so valuable, right? So don't, you know, be in too much of a hurry to get there. But also, I mean, if you're ambitious, you might find yourself in positions where you're super young and you're leading people that are much older than you. And that might be the case here for some people on this call. And that's always tricky as well. And something I experienced, I did experience that as well at one point in my career when I was, I led a continuity of operations program for a local municipality. And so I had to manage all the departments and divisions for this planning. And I had some people that were like, you know, could be my grandparents. And it was very tricky. And I think this is where those psychology and soft skills come in. You know, your empathy, I think, plays a huge role in how you handle those situations. And I wouldn't discredit yourself. I don't think you should second guess. If you find yourself in those positions, it's likely because you're qualified. So I would say just lean into it and don't let the opinions of other people get to you, and just keep that empathy top of mind, right? Because that's going to help you navigate those relationships, those people, and earn their respect ultimately. So yeah, those are just my two cents. Are there any other questions here at all? If not, I have one more that we can depart with since we're at the hour. So just looking forward, what advice do you think, either one of you can jump in here, we give for individuals who aspire to achieve high level success in their careers while also seeking fulfillment in their personal lives? Are there particular mindsets, habits, or principles that we believe are key to achieving this balance? I think everyone's looking for this golden rule of how to achieve this, right? Is there any? anything we can lead with here?
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave with saying that be bold. Anytime when you do something new, there's always going to be fear. There's always going to be, hey, will this turn out good? Hey, am I good enough? I think that's always going to be there, but that should not stop you from trying something new, being bold, being ambitious, be having really big goals, because you never know. And you might just learn along the way and just be good at it. So I think one advice, if you want, is just be bold and be brave.
I love it. How about you, ChengCheng? Any departing
Yeah,
words of
I
wisdom?
love it. I think the mindset with growth mindset is very similar, right? Stay curious, keep learning, go out, try new things, get involved with Women Who Code. That I think that will help you.
Yeah, absolutely.
too.
And then also too, I think especially people I find in this field are yes people, like we want to take on more and more and more, and we are always saying yes to every opportunity, right, that comes our way. And I think at some point you get enough wisdom, hopefully. I mean, I think I still struggle with this myself, but I think it's good to get to a point where you know what things you can say no to, and it's quite okay, because there just isn't enough time in the day. And I think the only way you're going to achieve that balance is to realize that you're a multi-dynamic person, you're multifaceted, and your personality isn't just your job. And it's okay to have other things like a family or hobbies that really just fill your cup. And it's quite all right to say no to have those other experiences, because life is short. So, and I think if you can do that, you will have that feeling of fulfillment, and your job might even be more rewarding because you're not just so depleted on one end of the spectrum, right? But I think that's basically it. If I had to sum it up in a nutshell.